Hey, what's going on? I'm Matt O'Leary back with another video, and today's topic is going to be a power ranking of the New York Jets positions. So where they are the best and where they are the weakest in terms of the roster. But before we get started, I just wanted to mention that you can follow me on social media at Matt O'Leary NY on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you're on already, please make sure to subscribe to the channel for more Jets content. And now that we got that out of the way, we can get started with today's video. So the Jets have an interesting looking roster. It is better than what it has been the last few years. They had $100 million in cap space. They went out and spent it. So what I wanted to do is go by position groups and rank them in terms of best to worst, and going into consideration the stars and the starters and also the depth as well. So it's a mix of starters and depth making out my rankings. So I came up with 10 positions that I want to talk about. Quarterback, wide receiver, running back, tight end, offensive line, defensive line, inside linebacker, outside linebacker, cornerback, safety. That is the 10 positions that I'll be lumping together and talking about. Obviously, if we went by right defensive end, left defensive end, we'd be here forever. So we're not doing that. We're just lumping O-line, D-line together, the cornerbacks, and so on and so forth from there. So starting with number 10, the weakest positional group on the New York Jets is definitely the cornerback group. Not a good-looking group as of right now. You have Tremaine Johnson as the de facto number one, coming off an awful year last year. Granted, Greg Williams is a defensive coordinator now, but all things considered, he looks like an aging corner and not your prototypical number one anymore. Your number two, you're relying on Dow Roberts to really step up into a bigger role. I like Roberts, but in small doses. So he's probably realistically your fourth corner on a good team. Third, your slot corner, you went from essentially a okay version of Buster Screen to another okay version of Brian Poole, and they're essentially the same player. That's kind of a lateral step, so they didn't really get much better there. Their depth after that's what's really scary. You have Parry Nickerson, Derek Jones, Blesson Austin, Tavon Campbell. I mean, that's not a great group. You're one injury away from having to play Blesson Austin or Parry Nickerson in a big role. No, thank you. I am all set with that. I know Derek Jones has flashed in the preseason and stuff like that. Still, this is by far the weakest group on the New York Jets. Coming in at number 9, I have the offensive line. Bringing in Kelechi Osalemi was a huge move for Mike McCagnon before he got fired. He is going to slot in at left guard. At left tackle, Calvin Beachum is a fine starting left tackle. He is not great. He is fine. He's okay. Center position, this is a huge disaster. Utter disaster if Jonathan Harrison is your starting center on opening day, and it certainly looks to be that way. Not good. Right side of the line is also questionable. Brian Winters is an okay, maybe slightly below average starting right guard, and then right tackle Brandon Shell, I think, is extremely overrated by Jets fans. I think he is below average as a starting right tackle, and there's no saying that he's going to be fully healthy this year. And their depth beyond that, not that great either. You have names like Tom Compton, Brent Qualley, Tyler Jones. That's not really great depth. Chuma Ndoga, you just drafted in the 3rd round. I like him as a prospect, but as a long-term development, I don't think he's going to be ready in 2019. This is a 2020. Maybe he's starting in 2020 on the line, and that's fine. But as of right now, I don't want to see Chuma Ndoga out there. And this group does not have a ton of depth, and it's a below-average line in the NFL. Coming in at number 8 is the outside linebackers. You have Jordan Jenkins, who is an okay to average, I guess. He's just a guy, a jag out there, and he's fine. He had 7 sacks last year, but I don't think he's giving you 7 sacks again this year. On the other side, you probably have Brandon Copeland starting, and he's probably a little bit even below Jordan Jenkins, so he's a replacement level starter. He's not someone that you want starting at outside linebacker. Maybe Ja'Kai Polite, but again, he's a 3rd round pick. I like him. I think he has potential, but you have no idea what this kid is yet. So I'm not willing to sit here and say, oh, they have great depth because they have Ja'Kai Polite. No, I'm not going to go that far anyway. You have Frankie Louvu as someone who could be a rotational guy. Terrell Basham coming off the bench in rotation. Not the best group. That's why for me they're coming in at number 8. At number 7, I have the tight end group. Listen, the starter, Chris Herndon, real solid, but he's missing the first 4 weeks of the year due to suspension. So that means that for a quarter of the season, the Jets are going to have to figure something else out. And their depth after Chris Herndon, really not all that great. Ryan Griffin, Daniel Brown, Eric Tomlinson, Trayvon Wesco, who's more of a blocking tight end that they just drafted. I am not comfortable with any of those guys starting. You could maybe make the case that one of those guys is an okay number 2 tight end, but realistically, you need somebody to be a starting tight end out of those 4 for a quarter of the season. Don't love that. It's not the best unit. Obviously, I have it ranked lower down. Chris Herndon, when healthy and when playing, obviously carries this unit, and he's potentially going to be a very good receiving tight end in this league for a long time. But outside of Herndon, they don't have a ton of depth at this position, and it's a little bit on the weaker side. Coming in at number 6 is the wide receiver group. Now, I like the top 3 guys a lot. I think they're going to be really productive. Robbie Anderson is not your prototypical number 1 receiver, but he is a great deep threat, and his route tree is expanding. Quincy Enunwa, I really like. When he's healthy and on the field, he is a very interesting piece to an offense. And then Jamison Crowder, I think, is going to be huge in the slot. I think all 3 of those guys are going to be productive and good targets for Sam Darnold. It's after that what I'm really nervous about. Who is going to be the 4th wide receiver? You have guys like Josh Bellamy, who's more of a special teamer. Sharon Peak, probably not going to make the team. Deontay Burnett, Tim White. These aren't household names. These aren't guys that I would feel comfortable with. And that means the Jets are 1 injury away from having one of these guys in the starting rotation. Because let's face it, you probably are going to have 3 wide receiver sets most of the way if you're in the New York Jets. And I don't feel comfortable with anyone outside the top 3 in that role. So they could probably use another depth piece at this position, someone who gets cut loose in training camp. But I don't love this group in terms of 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, I like a lot. I think is underrated. But after that, not so good. That's why the wide receiver group for me is coming in 6th overall. At number 5, I have the safeties. And I know Jamal Adams is arguably the best player on that defense, and he is definitely carrying this group. But outside of that, there's some question marks. Marcus May, I really like. I think he's a productive player, but he can't stay healthy. He's on the PUP list right now. He only played 6 games last year, so that's a huge question mark. And if he is not starting, that means one of Rontez Miles or Doug Middleton is, and both of those guys are terrible. That they do not have good depth past the 2, Marcus May, Jamal Adams, and I don't feel comfortable with Doug Middleton or Rontez Miles starting if Marcus May is out. So for me, that's why they're coming in at number 5. Rontez Miles and Doug Middleton really weaken this group. If Marcus May stays healthy and Jamal Adams takes that next step, this could be a really good back end of a defense, but that's a big question mark with Marcus May because he's not healthy right now. Coming in at number 4, I have the quarterback group. I have, obviously, Sam Darnold's leading the way there. He should prove that he's a franchise quarterback this year. We saw some really great strides down the stretch from him in the last 4 games of the year. He was the highest rated quarterback by Pro Football Focus in those final 4 games, and he showed flashes in the games previous to that. So the mindset is that he's going to take that year 2 leap. After that, you have one of probably Luke Falk, Davis Webb, or Trevor Siemian as a backup. Any one of those 3 is an okay level backup. I'd lean towards Trevor Siemian, but it's not like the best quarterback room in the league. You don't have like a Nick Foles like backup or even a Ryan Fitzpatrick backup who's someone who's has good starting experience. It's an okay quarterback room. Obviously, the only thing that matters really is the starting quarterback, but it's doable. That's why it's in the top half of the Jets power rankings in terms of position. And realistically, what Sam Darnold does could potentially move this higher up the rankings when we're doing this next year. At number 3, I have the Jets inside linebackers. You have Avery Williamson and new addition CJ Mosley as your starters. Those are 2 very solid guys at the inside linebacker position as your starters. Takes a little bit of a step down once you go to the backup roles. You have Neville Hewitt and 5th round pick Blake Cashman as your backups. If one of those guys goes down with an injury, I don't really feel too comfortable with any of those 2 guys taking over. Neville Hewitt, I think, is okay. He's a little bit of a preseason darling. To be honest with you, I didn't love the Blake Cashman pick. I really would have liked the Jets to go somewhere else, but he's had a ton of tackles at the collegiate level, so maybe he's able to step up and develop quicker because the Jets are going to really need him to, as a 5th round pick, develop pretty quickly so that he could be a capable backup in this league. I don't think they're looking for him to start right away or anything like that, but they are looking for him to be a legitimate backup right away, which is a little bit of a stretch for someone in the 5th round, taking where he was, because he should realistically be just a special teamer or a practice squad guy. At number 2, we obviously only have 2 positions left to talk about. I think this one's going to come as a little bit of a surprise to you guys because I think most people are going to rate this one number 1, and that is the defensive line. Obviously, you have Quinnen Williams, who you just drafted 3rd overall. You have Leonard Williams, who you recently took 6th overall in 2015. Henry Anderson had a really good year last year. Steve McClendon, obviously a good rotational piece, a little bit of a veteran. After that, though, a little bit of a step down. Nathan Shepard has to prove more to me this year. He was not all that great in his rookie year last year, and he's a much older prospect. Folu Fatukasi, is he alive? Does he have a pulse? We got to see more out of Folu Fatukasi. Again, those first 4 names that I mentioned are really, really solid. And Leonard Williams, Quinnen Williams, Henry Anderson, and Steve McClendon. That's a really nice 4-man rotational group for, a 3-4 defense. But you take a little bit of a step down with the depth. And honestly, the position I really want to talk about the most, and I think a lot of people are even underrating this one outside of Le'Veon Bell, is the running backs. By far, the running backs is the best and the most depth on this team. And that's what we're looking at. We're looking at the best starters and the best depth, and it's by far running back. Le'Veon Bell is a starter. He is an all-pro caliber running back, top 5 back in the league when healthy and when playing and not holding out. So that's a plus. But then you have 2 more really good, capable backups. Ty Montgomery is going to be really effective in the passing game, and he showed in Green Bay that he's a real solid threat in both running and receiving. And then old, reliable Bilal Powell. Honestly, I've been riding the Bilal Powell train for so long. I think he's one of the most underrated backs in the league. He is really, really solid, and the fact that he is your 3rd running back allows you to do so much more because the Jets relied on him a lot the last couple of years. Really, in 2016, he was very, very good for this team. And the fact that he's 30 years old now and still doing this at this level, the Jets drafted him in 2011. But he is really good at blocking. He's good out of the backfield, good yards per attempt rushing the ball. That bumps guys like Trenton Cannon and Elijah McGuire potentially off the roster. And Eli McGuire, I think, is overrated by a lot of Jets fans because he's pretty good out of the backfield, but he can't run for a lick. And Trenton Cannon, I don't like him. I know he has a ton of speed. I think he's overrated on special teams. Didn't show me enough pass catching just yet and route running, and his yards per attempt was absolutely awful last year. So if Eli McGuire and Trenton Cannon are pushed off the team, I will not be crying about it because a running back room of Le'Veon Bell, Ty Montgomery, and Bilal Powell is probably the best in the league, or up there with one of the best running back rooms in the entire league. So let me know in the comments what you think. How would you rank these positional groups if you are ranking it for the New York Jets? Let me know, like I said, or you can get at me on social media at Matt O'Leary NY. Thank you so much for tuning in. Like the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, all that fun stuff, and I'll talk to you guys next time.